Have you ever walked past an old, abandoned school and felt a shiver run down your spine? What if I told you some schools are more than just empty buildings? They're gateways, holding secrets much darker than forgotten lessons in dusty textbooks. Today, we're venturing into the story of Northgate High, a place where the echoes of the past don't just whisper, they scream. Northgate High wasn't always a place of dread. When it was built in the early 1950s, it was a symbol of hope for a growing town. Shiny new classrooms, a sprawling gymnasium, a library filled with possibilities. But the builders, in their haste, had overlooked the land's dark history. They built their bright future directly on top of a forgotten past and unmarked burial ground from the late 1600s. This wasn't just any burial ground. It was the final resting place for a coven of women accused and executed for witchcraft. Their names were erased from history, their stories buried, or so everyone thought. For decades, everything seemed normal. Students came and went, graduating without a hint of the darkness that slept beneath their feet. But shadows don't sleep forever. The first strange occurrence was subtle, easily dismissed. A janitor, Mr. Henderson, was doing his late-night rounds. As he entered a third-floor classroom, he noticed something odd. The blackboard, which he'd personally wiped clean just hours earlier, was covered in chalk writing. It wasn't student graffiti. It was elegant, looping script, like something from an old manuscript. He couldn't make out the words. They seemed to be in a language he didn't recognize. He shrugged it off as a prank, wiped the board clean again, and locked the door. The next night, it happened again. This time, the writing was clearer, forming strange symbols and what looked like a list of names. None of them were current students. Henderson reported it, but nobody took him seriously. Kids will be kids, they said. Soon, the students started noticing things too. Fine chanting, like a chorus of whispers, would drift down empty hallways. It was always just on the edge of hearing. You'd turn a corner, expecting to find a group of students, but there would be no one there. The air would grow cold, and the whispers would fade, leaving you questioning your own senses. Lockers would slam shut in deserted corridors. Library books would fly off shelves as if thrown by an unseen hand. The school nurse reported a sudden spike in students complaining of headaches and overwhelming feelings of sadness, particularly in the older parts of the building, the parts built directly over the burial ground. The school was becoming sick. The unease curdled into genuine fear. The night of the winter formal, 4 students, Sarah, Mike, Jessica, and David, decided to sneak away from the dance and explore the forbidden third floor, drawn by the spooky legends that were now common gossip. They dared each other to enter the classroom where the chalk writing always appeared. As they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them. The air grew ice. On the blackboard, glowing faintly in the moonlight, chalk began to move on its own. It wasn't writing symbols this time. It was writing a list of names. Sarah, Mike, Jessica, David. Then, a voice, cold and ancient, echoed through the room, seeming to come from the very walls. It was a roll call. It called Sarah's name. Terrified, almost by instinct, Sarah whispered, "Here." The chalk next to her name drew a single, sharp checkmark. The voice called for Mike. He didn't answer. It called again, more forceful this time. He stayed silent. Then it called for Jessica. Shaking, she managed to say, "Present." Another checkmark appeared. Finally, it called for David. He refused to speak. The room fell silent. The oppressive feeling lifted, and the door creaked open. Mike and David scrambled out, pulling a frozen Sarah and Jessica with them. They ran, never looking back. They told their friends what happened, but their story was dismissed as a Halloween prank. Except, something had changed. Sarah and Jessica weren't the same. They became withdrawn, quiet. They would stare into space for hours, sometimes whispering names under their breath. Their friends noticed they seemed faded, less present. They were physically there, but it felt like their spirits were slowly being drained away. They started missing school, and when they did show up, they looked pale and exhausted, as if they hadn't slept in weeks. The true horror came one Monday morning. Sarah and Jessica were gone. They weren't in their beds. Their parents had no idea where they were. They had vanished without a trace. The police investigation found nothing. It was as if they had simply ceased to exist. Mike and David knew the truth. They tried to tell the authorities about the roll call, about the voice in the classroom. They were met with skepticism and concern for their mental well-being. No one believed them. The school declared it a tragic runaway situation, but Mike and David knew better. Answering the roll call had sealed their friend's fate. After that, Northgate High's reputation was shattered. Parents, spooked by the disappearances and the ever-growing list of strange incidents, began pulling their children out of the school. Enrollment plummeted. The strange events only escalated. The chalk writings became more frequent, now appearing in multiple classrooms. The names of the executed women began appearing, along with the names of Sarah and Jessica. The chanting was no longer a whisper. It was a clear, melodic, and deeply unsettling sound that could be heard throughout the school at night. Hanitor's Keat refusing to work after dark. The school was dying. Within 2 years, it was forced to close its doors for good. Today, Northgate High stands empty, a decaying monument to its haunted past. Locals stay far away, especially at night. They say if you're brave enough to stand by the rusted gates, you can still hear the faint sound of chanting on the wind. Some claim to see lights moving in the third-floor windows, or the ghostly image of chalk writing appearing on the dusty blackboards inside. And they whisper a warning, passed down through the town. A warning about the ghost witches and their eternal roll call. The legend says they are still trying to complete their coven, to replace the sisters they lost centuries ago. They call out to anyone who trespasses in their domain. Anyone foolish enough to wander the halls of the abandoned school might hear a voice call their name. And if they answer, if they dare to say here or present, they will be marked. And before the sun rises, they too will vanish, their name added to the ghostly roster, becoming another lost soul bound to the halls of Northgate High forever. The school may be abandoned by the living, but it is far from empty. It has a full attendance. So, next time you see an old, forgotten school, remember Northgate. Remember that some doors are closed for a reason, and some histories refuse to stay buried. And if you ever find yourself in a place where the past feels a little too present, and you hear a voice call your name out of the darkness, don't answer. Thanks for joining me on this chilling journey into the story of the ghost witches of Northgate High. What do you think happened to Sarah and Jessica? Let me know in the comments below. And if you love diving into dark legends and spooky stories like this one, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more tailies from the shadows. Stay safe, and see you next time. Have you ever heard a knock on your door late at night and felt a sudden chill run down your spine? In the sleepy town of Blackwood Creek, that feeling is all too familiar. They say if you hear a gentle tapping on your door at the stroke of midnight, you must never answer Italiano. This isn't just an old wives' tale or a local superstition. It's a matter of life and death. The knocking isn't from a lost traveler or a neighbor in need. It's the ghost of a little girl, a child with eyes as dark and empty as the night itself. Her name was Lily, or so the story goes. 100 years ago, she was just an ordinary child who loved to sing lullabies to her dolls. But one moonless night, she vanished from her bed, leaving behind nothing but a cold draft and an open window. The town searched for weeks, but Lily was gone. A year later, the knocking began. It always starts the same way. 3 soft, hesitant taps, precisely at midnight. It's a sound so innocent, so unassuming, it's almost impossible to ignore. It tugs at your heartstrings, making you think a child is lost and needs your help. That's the trap. The first person to answer was old Mr. Abernathy, a kind but lonely widower who lived on the edge of town. He heard the faint knocking and, thinking a child had wandered off from the nearby woods, he opened his door without a second thought. Standing on his porch was a little girl in a white nightgown, her face pale in the moonlight. She looked up at him with those big, sad eyes and began to hum a sweet, haunting lullaby. Mr. Abernathy felt a strange drowsiness wash over him, a deep and peaceful calm. He didn't remember closing the door or going back to bed. The next morning, his neighbors found him fast asleep in his armchair, a faint smile on his lips. "Ese mad fine, just a little disoriented." He told everyone he'd had the most wonderful dream, a dream of a peaceful, sunlit meadow, but he couldn't shake the memory of the lullaby. Over the next few months, more people answered the door. A young couple, the Hendersons, heard the knock and opened it together. They too saw the little girl and heard her song. The next day, they woke up on a park bench in the next town over, with no memory of how they got there. Their car was still in their driveway, their wallets and phones untouched. They were terrified, but unharmed. The stories started to spread, and the legend of the ghost child of Blackwood Creek was born. People learned to dread the sound of midnight. They'd double-check their locks, turn up their televisions, do anything to drown out the potential sound of that gentle tap, tap, tap. But the ghost child, Lily, isn't the true evil in this story. She's merely a puppet, a restless spirit bound to a far more sinister force, deep in the shadowed heart of Blackwood Forest. In a crooked shack that leans against the wind, lives the one they call the Midnight Witch. No one knows her real name or how long she's been there. Some say she's as old as the forest itself. She was the one who took Lily all those years ago, not to harm her, but to use her. The witch feeds on dreams, on stolen memories, and on the very essence of a peaceful night's sleep. She uses Lily's innocent spirit as a lure, sending her out to gather what she craves. The witch's power lies in the lullaby. It's an ancient, enchanted melody that separates a person's consciousness from their body. When someone answers the door and hears Lily's song, their mind is carried away on the notes, transported to a dreamscape created by the witch. For most, it's a temporary journey. They wake up confused and displaced, with a piece of their night stolen, a memory gap they can't explain. The witch feasts on this stolen time, this sliver of life, and it sustains her. The victims are left feeling groggy, as if they haven't slept at all, their dreams replaced by an unsettling void. They feel a lingering sadness. They can't quite place an echo of the ghost child's own sorrow. But sometimes, the journey isn't temporary. Not everyone who answers the knock wakes up. Years ago, a young man named Thomas, new to town and dismissive of local folklore, heard the midnight knock. He scoffed at his friend's warnings and swung the door open, ready to confront what he thought was a prank. He saw the girl, heard the lullaby, and felt the familiar wave of drowsiness. But Thomas never woke up. His body was found in his bed the next morning, perfectly still, with no signs of struggle or injury. He was simply gone. The doctors called it an unexplained aneurysm, a sudden and tragic event, but the townspeople knew the truth. The Midnight Witch had taken him. They say that for some, the dreamscape the witch creates is so perfect, so alluring, that they don't want to leave. A place where all their deepest desires are fulfilled. A paradise tailored just for them. For the lonely widower, it was a reunion with his wife. For an aspiring artist, it was a gallery filled with their masterpieces. The witch offers them a perfect dream in exchange for their life. They become lost in her illusion, their consciousness fading away forever as she consumes their spirit whole. These are the ones who don't come back. Their bodies are left behind, empty vessels, while their souls are trapped in the witch's web of dreams. The town of Blackwood Creek lives in a state of quiet fear. Every night, as the clock ticks towards 12, a collective tension settles over the houses. Parents tell their children the story not to scare them, but to protect them. They teach them to ignore the knocks, to stuff pillows over their ears, to sing their own songs, to block out the haunted lullaby. They know that behind that innocent tapping is a tragedy, the spirit of a little girl forced to serve a monstrous master, and behind her is a witch who hungers for dreams, for memories, and for the unwary souls who are foolish enough to open their doors at midnight. There's a part of the legend that most people don't talk about. It's whispered that the only way to break the curse is to save Lily's spirit. To do that, one would have to follow the lullaby, not as a victim, but as a rescuer. One would have to find the witch's shack in the heart of the forest and confront her, but no one has ever been brave enough or foolish enough to try. The path through Blackwood Forest is treacherous, even in daylight, and at night, it's said the trees themselves move to protect the witch's lair. The air grows cold, and whispers follow you through the dark, echoes of the souls she has taken. So the cycle continues. Night after night, the little ghost girl walks the silent streets of Blackwood Creek. Her tiny, spectral feet make no sound on the pavement. As the town clock strikes 12, she raises a small, translucent hand and knocks. Tap, Tap. Tap. She isn't evil. She is a prisoner, forever bound to her task, her own lullaby, a weapon she's forced to wield. She is just as much a victim as the people she lures. The true monster waits in the woods, listening to the echoes of the song, and patiently waiting for her next meal to be delivered. So if you ever find yourself in a quiet town and hear a gentle knock late at night, remember the story of Blackwood Creek. Remember Lily and the witch who pulls her strings. Keep your door locked. Ignore the sound, and pray you don't hear the first notes of a lullaby drifting through the keyhole. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Let me know in the comments what you would do if you heard that midnight knock. Stay safe, and see you next time. Ever heard of a place where the dead don't just rest, but whisper? A place so deeply hidden that even the oldest maps have forgotten it. Tucked away in the heart of an ancient, gnarled forest lies a patch of unholy ground, known only in hushed legends as the Witch's Graveyard. This isn't your ordinary cemetery. Here, the spirits of executed witches are eternally bound to the very soil they were buried in, their restless souls unable to move on. Locals, the few who even dare to speak of it, say that if you stand among the crooked, moss-covered headstones on a moonless night, you can hear them. Faint whispers, like the rustling of dead leaves, rise from the cold earth. They're not just random sounds. They are pleased, desperate, and chilling. Voices of men, women, and even children, begging for release, begging for someone to dig them up and set them free from their earthly prison. It's a powerful lure, isn't it? The idea of being a savior, of freeing a tortured soul. Many have been tempted. Brave, foolish, or compassionate souls have ventured into that forest, armed with shovels and good intentions. They hear the whispers grow stronger, more distinct as they approach the graveyard. A young woman's voice, promising gratitude. A child's whimper, pleading for its mother. The temptation becomes overwhelming. But this is where the true horror begins. The graveyard holds a terrible secret, a curse woven by the witches in their final, vengeful breaths. The whispers are not a plea for freedom. They are a trap. The moment a shovel breaks the soil, the moment a single bone is unearthed, the curse is unleashed. The spirit bound to those remains doesn't ascend to a peaceful afterlife. No, it latches onto the nearest living thing, the one who so foolishly answered its call. Imagine the chilling realization. You've just dug up a grave, and suddenly, the air grows impossibly cold. The whispers stop. All of them. The forest falls into a dead silence, more terrifying than any sound. You feel a presence behind you, a breath on your neck, but when you spin around, there's nothing there. But it's too late. The spirit is already with you. It's inside you. At first, it's subtle. You start hearing a voice in your head, a constant companion. It claims to be grateful, offering advice, sharing secrets of the past. It feels like a newfound friend, a confidant who understands you better than anyone. You might even feel powerful, more perceptive. But slowly, things start to change. You find yourself saying things you don't mean, doing things you can't explain. Your reflection in the mirror sometimes seems to smirk when you're not smiling. Your own hands feel like they belong to someone else. The spirit isn't your friend. It's a parasite. It's been trapped for centuries, starved of life, and now it's feasting on yours. It begins to push your consciousness aside, like an unwanted guest taking over your home. You become a passenger in your own body, watching in horror as this ancient entity uses your voice, your hands, your face. Friends and family notice the change. They say you're not yourself, that there's a coldness in your eyes they've never seen before. But they can't possibly understand the truth. They can't see the silent, screaming war happening inside your mind. You fight. You struggle to regain control. But the spirit is old and strong. It's been waiting for this chance for longer than your family line has existed. It wears you down, day by day, until your own thoughts are just echoes in the back of your skull. Your memories are devoured, replaced with its own. Your personality is erased, painted over with its sinister desires. The final stage is the most terrifying. One day, you wake up, and you are no longer there at all. Your consciousness is gone, completely extinguished. The spirit is now the sole occupant. It looks out through your eyes, lives your life, and no one is the wiser. To the outside world, you might seem a bit different, perhaps more eccentric or withdrawn, but you are still there. But the real you is gone forever, replaced by a centuries-old ghost that just escaped its grave. This process has been repeating for generations. Think about it. How many people in the world today are not who they seem? How many are just vessels for these escaped spirits, walking among us, hiding in plain sight? A person you pass on the street, a coworker, maybe even someone you know and love, could be a shell inhabited by a vengeful ghost from that forgotten graveyard. They're looking for new victims, whispering new temptations, perpetuating the cycle. The legend says the only way to stop it is to rebury the bones in their original grave with a specific ritual. But how could you? The person who freed the spirit is the one possessed. They would never allow their newfound freedom to be taken away. They would fight, lie, and manipulate to protect their host body. The curse is perfectly designed. The problem contains its own prevention. The rescuer becomes the prison, and the cycle of haunting and replacement continues, unbroken. So, if you ever find yourself lost in an ancient forest and stumble upon a clearing with weathered, crooked tombstones, and you hear whispers rising from the earth, begging you to dig, run. Do not listen. Do not be tempted by their pleas for freedom, because the only thing you'll be releasing is your own soul. The witch's graveyard doesn't hold the dead. It holds a waiting list, and they are always whispering for the next volunteer. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy stories that crawl under your skin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there. Have you ever looked into a mirror and felt like the person staring back wasn't quite you? It's a fleeting, unsettling feeling. But what if that feeling wasn't fleeting? What if the reflection had a mind of its own and a dark history? Tonight, we're journeying to the shores of a place known to locals as Mirror Lake, a name that holds a chilling double meaning. By day, Mirror Lake is the picture of tranquility. Sunlight dances on its calm, glassy surface. Birds sing in the surrounding ancient woods, and the air is fresh and clean. Families picnic on its grassy banks, and couples stroll along its winding paths. It looks like a postcard, a perfect slice of natural beauty, untouched by the chaos of the modern world. But as the sun dips below the horizon and the moon begins its ascent, the lake undergoes a sinister transformation. The serene water becomes a dark, cold-looking glass, and what it reflects is not always what's there. This is when the true story of Mirror Lake begins. A story whispered in hushed tones. A story of a witch, a betrayal, and a curse that has haunted these waters for centuries. Our tale begins over 300 years ago, in a small, isolated village that once stood near the lake's edge. This was a time of deep suspicion and fear, where superstition held more sway than reason. Living on the outskirts of this village was a woman named Ilara. She wasn't what you might imagine a witch to be. She wasn't a wizened old crone with a hooked nose and a cackling laugh. Ilara was young, beautiful, and deeply connected to the natural world. She was a healer, a herbalist, who understood the secrets of the forest. The villagers sought her out in secret, bringing her their sick children and their ailing livestock. She used her knowledge of plants and ancient remedies to mend their wounds and cure their illnesses, asking for nothing in return but their respect for the land. But her gifts, her independence, and her striking beauty bred jealousy and fear in equal measure. The village elder, a man named Theron, grew wary of her influence. He saw how the villagers respected her, how they spoke of her cures as miracles. He feared her power, not because it was evil, but because he couldn't control it. He began to poison the minds of the villagers, twisting their gratitude into suspicion. He whispered that Ilara's cures were not from the earth, but from a much darker source. He claimed her beauty was a glamour, a magical illusion designed to deceive them. He painted her as a devil in disguise, a threat to their very souls. The turning point came during a particularly harsh winter. A blight struck the village's crops, and a strange sickness swept through the community. Desperate and terrified, the villagers needed a scapegoat, and Theron gave them one. Ilara? He accused her of casting a curse upon the village, of causing the famine and the plague with her dark arts. He whipped the villagers into a frenzy of fear and hatred. One night, under the cold light of a full moon, a mob, led by Theron, descended upon Ilara's small cottage. They dragged her from her home, ignoring her pleas of innocence. They didn't give her a trial. There was no chance for her to speak, no one to defend her. Their minds were already made up. They bound her hands and feet with coarse rope and dragged her to the shore of the very lake she so loved. As she stood at the water's edge, her eyes met those of the villagers she had once helped. She saw no gratitude, only a terrifying, empty rage. With a final, heart-wrenching cry that was a mix of sorrow and fury, they cast her into the icy, black depths of the lake. She struggled, but the ropes held fast. As she sank beneath the surface, the full moon's light was the last thing she saw, its reflection warped and broken on the rippling water. The villagers watched until the bubbles stopped. Then they returned to their homes, convinced they had purged the evil from their midst. But they hadn't purged it. They had created it. Elara's spirit, filled with the agony of betrayal, did not pass on. It remained, trapped within the cold embrace of the lake, forever bound to the place of her murder. Her restless spirit latched onto the one thing that bore witness to her final moments, the reflection of the full moon on the water. And so the legend began. Generations have passed. The old village has crumbled to dust, but the ghost of Elara remains. Her curse isn't one of violent revenge, but something far more insidious. It's a curse of identity, of self. The legend says that on nights when the moon is full and hangs like a silver coin in the sky, the lake calls to the curious, the brave, and the foolish. Those who venture for a swim under the full moon find the water eerily still, like a perfect sheet of polished obsidian. And as they tread water, they might catch a glimpse of their own reflection. At first, everything seems normal. But then, a subtle wrongness creeps in. When they raise a hand to wave, their reflection remains still. When they turn their head to look at the shore, their reflection continues to stare right back at them, its eyes wide and unblinking. The reflection begins to move independently, its motions slow and deliberate. Its expression shifts from a mirror image of their own to something else, a look of profound sadness, then of cold, empty longing. The face in the water is no longer their own. It is the face of Elara, her beautiful features twisted by centuries of sorrow. Most people recoil in terror, scrambling out of the water and fleeing into the night, never looking back. They tell their stories with trembling voices, dismissed by skeptics as tricks of the light or a case of overactive imagination. But some are captivated. They are mesmerized by the ghostly face in the water, by the deep, unspoken grief in her eyes. They stare, unable to look away, as their own reflection is completely consumed by hers. They feel a strange pull, a sense of empathy for the drowned woman in the water. They float there, locked in a silent, chilling communion with the spirit of the lake. They don't scream. They don't struggle. They simply stare. The next morning, these unfortunate souls are found, not in the water, but standing at the lake's edge. They are soaking wet, their clothes clinging to their bodies, their eyes vacant and staring out across the surface. They are alive, but they are not there. When found, they don't respond to their own names. They don't recognize their loved ones. They can't remember where they came from, who they are, or how they got there. Their memories, their identities, their very sense of self have been stolen, drawn out of them and into the lake. The only thing they can do is whisper, over and over again, in a soft, hollow monotone. They repeat a single name. Elara. It's as if her name is the only word left in their minds, a constant, haunting echo. The curse is complete. Elara, who had her identity and life stolen from her, now steals it from others. She doesn't drown their bodies. She drowns their souls, leaving behind an empty shell. Local authorities and medical experts are baffled. They diagnose it as a rare form of dissociative amnesia, perhaps brought on by the shock of cold water or some other environmental trigger. But the old-timers, the ones who know the lake's true history, they know better. They know it's the witch's ghost, forever seeking to replace the life that was so cruelly taken from her. Over the years, dozens have fallen victim to the curse of Mirror Lake. Their families are left to care for strangers who wear the faces of their loved ones. The victims live out their days in a state of perpetual confusion, forever haunted by a name they don't understand, standing as a living testament to the tragic story of Elara. The lake itself seems to hold on to this sorrow. Even on the brightest days, those who know the legend feel a distinct chill near the water's edge, a sense of being watched from just beneath the surface. So if you ever find yourself by a beautiful, secluded lake on a night with a full moon, and the water looks as smooth and reflective as a mirror. You might be tempted to go for a swim. But remember the story of Elara. Remember what happens when you stare too long at your own reflection. Because what you see looking back at you might not be you at all. And you might just leave a piece of yourself behind in the cold, dark water, becoming another lost soul whispering her name at the edge of the witch-esque ghost in the Mirror Lake. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next dive into the unknown. Stay safe, and always be careful what you look for in the dark.